Hi, everyone. Um, I wanted to wrap up this discussion in a video and share with you what everyone has been saying. There's been a lot of really great things. So I'm going to share my screen and go through it briefly because I was just really impressed. You said some really phenomenal things. So I want to start with Susan. Susan talked about getting the discussion going again by reaching out to students and on or off the discussion board and helping the, kind of letting the students weigh in on the topics. She did a really nice reflection on a student's perspective of being in the class and why they might not be posting. It just was a good post to read, so it might be worth looking at. And then talked about the importance of discussion prompts. She said those discussion prompts need to be so inviting that the students can't wait to weigh in. And so just thinking about what you're asking them to write about. Noreen talked about keeping a list of responses from term to term, which I thought was a great idea. If you teach the same class over and over again and you have a bank of responses, it just helps speed things up. And then engaging students by starting with engaging topics, kind of like Susan said, and using that to drive them to participate. Laura talked about asking students questions right after they post, and also emailing or giving them feedback to ask them to participate earlier. Just using that time as a really big key. And I've noticed that too. The faster you get them notified that they need to participate, the better it'll be. Jennifer talked about giving them options to engage them and also sending feedback in the grades, emails, and then follow up with emails when they don't write back. And so just that constant communication. Todd said, if a post already has a lively discussion, I tend to let it run its course and interject if necessary. And I think that's a good reminder because sometimes I think it's easy for me as an instructor to think, oh, I need to respond to everything. And sometimes the students just need to learn from themselves. And I think Todd said that perfectly. And also, he talked about engaging them by asking questions to clarify posts. Jessica talked about engaging students by asking questions and spending more time with them in the discussion. And some of you have talked about this before, how if you see someone not getting replies, how that's a really good place for you to step in and ask questions to get others thinking about that post. And then she even said she has students who ask if she can email them periodically to check in and hold them personally accountable. And I think that's really a great way to connect with them. Kristen G focused her posts on those students who may need a little more direction. And she talked about some students really know what they're doing and know how to meet the requirements, and then the others, they may be new to the online environment, and so helping them navigate this that's what we're here for. And then she tries to give a lot of feedback in the first few discussions and refer students to their rubric. And I think that's very powerful. I think if you can start out really strong, it helps you in the long run. Kimberly talked about asking follow-up questions to promote analysis or evaluation. And that was something a lot of people talked about in some of our earlier discussions, using those Bloom's verbs and pushing it to a higher level, asking guided questions. And she said, I actually provided an example discussion post from a student in a previous class to give them an idea of the depth needed. That was a really great idea for discussions. I do that for projects, but I hadn't thought of using that for discussions. So that sounds like a very powerful tool. Kayla posts follow-up questions that reinforce what they've written and build on it in a way that requires a response. And then she leaves in the gradebook in the gradebook, she tells them the minimum response requirements and informs students about the subscription alert notifications. And that's a great way to help students keep track of things too. Dawn talked about how she tries to determine why a student is not participating and talked about how it's easier in face-to-face situations. But understanding what's going on that's a great tool that she's using. And she includes as many personal and world references as she can. And that sounds like a really great way to engage students. Leslie talks about sharing an image or a photo or a video and then asking them a question about that image. And I think in some subjects that's a great way to get them thinking. She connects it to their lives and also asks them, explicitly says, how can I best support you, or to re-engage them? And who better to tell you what they need than the student? Jamie will interject with a personal experience or ask about how their work-life experiences fall in line with the topic. And then she adds reminders in the grading boxes to reply before the deadline. And I wanted to show you that one actually. So for example, if this discussion was not over yet, something you could do is go to the overall feedback and write, hi, first name. Don't forget the replies are due by X next date. And then you save it, and then when you come back, you can delete it, but then everyone sees it. I think that's a really great tool. I hadn't thought about using that, but that gets to everyone, and students are always checking the grade book. Mallory gave this really nice synthesis of 4 or 5 different types of students. So that might be a post worth looking at. I really thought it was just a really nice description of ways to think of different students. And then she also talked about how she uses those first 4 weeks to provide more feedback, and then is a little bit lighter on, because by then the students know what is expected of them. Lindsay uses the announcements and the email to remind and encourage students, and also reviews the rubric for the discussion posts. And then it is very specific, so they know what is expected of them. And then Dennis, he asks them to post. He's very just reaches out and says, ask them. He wants to make sure that they're able to join, because sometimes there's technology issues. And so just making sure that they can, and approach them with an email or a phone call, like some of the others have said. So thank you for all your thoughts. This was a really great discussion. I've learned a lot, and I hope you have too.